Hey guys, welcome to my Cursor and Coding with AI crash course. So in this video, I'm going to introduce you to Cursor and go over the features and interface, but I'm also going to spend time talking about just coding with AI in general. So a lot of these practices and workflows and the stuff we talk about, they're going to apply whether you're working with Cursor, Claude Code, Windsurf, or any of these other tools. So we're going to talk about things like agents, rules, context, models, things like that. So I want to give you kind of three different examples because there's different levels of how much AI assistance you can use in your project. So I want to start off doing what I would suggest beginners do, which is opening an existing project that you've been working on, open it in Cursor, and then start to use it gradually. So you can use things like tab completion and inline editing, and you can do that before you move to the main chat interface where you just vibe code and pretty much just tell it what to do. So we'll start off that way, and we're going to use just an existing shopping cart UI that I have. And then we're going to move on to some vibe coding, and we'll use the chat interface to create a SaaS landing page with an interactive calculator where you can change the number of users or the number of any kind of resource, and the price will update in real time. So we'll generate that. We'll go back and forth, ask it questions, talk about context. And then finally, we're going to create a Next.js project that will be a markdown resume editor. So something a little more in depth. And we'll, again, talk about context. I'll show you how we can create a context file. We'll also talk about setting rules and so on. All right, so this will be kind of it'll be longer than most Cursor tutorials because I feel like a lot of them, they just jump in and show you the chat interface and generate something and that's it. I want to go over the settings and go over, like I said, the kind of workflow that I would use for each of these different levels of AI assistance. All right, so let's get into it. All right, guys, so I just wanted to take a second and tell you about today's sponsor. So Sevalla is an all-in-one solution for hosting your apps, your APIs, static sites, and they support just about any popular language and framework that you can think of. And I myself have been doing web development for about 20 years now, and I remember the absolute nightmare that came with deployment and DevOps up until really just a few years ago. But Sevalla is a platform that makes it super easy, gives you a simple UI to work with, to deploy your applications, as well as spin up databases like Postgres in really just a couple of clicks. And you can deploy from GitHub or GitLab or from a Docker image. They offer free static site hosting and then app and database hosting from $5 per month. And then obviously you can scale as needed. And I don't take on sponsors that I don't believe in. Sevalla has a great service, great product, so check them out, and the link's in the description below. All right, so let's talk about what Cursor actually is. So it's essentially a supercharged version of VS Code with AI built directly into the editor. So it's not just another extension that you add on top. The AI features are baked into the core experience, and you get that familiar VS Code interface, and you have powerful AI assistants that can help you write, edit, and understand code. And I would say the main difference between Cursor and a lot of the other AI tools is how seamlessly integrated everything is. So instead of switching between your editor and a separate AI chat interface or dealing with clunky extensions, Cursor just gives you multiple ways to interact with the AI right from where you're already working, and it knows full context of your project. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about pricing because it can be pretty confusing, and even Cursor themselves admitted that their rollout for pricing was horrible, and it's changed over the past few months, and it'll probably change again. Oh, I know it will change again. It's just a matter of when. So by the time you watch this could be different. And I'll explain it to how I understand it because it still confuses me a little bit as well. And if I'm wrong about anything, feel free to correct me. So for the individual plans, you have the free tier, the hobby tier. You get a 2-week trial of the pro tier, and you get very limited agent requests, which are basically interactions with the AI. So whether that's in the chat interface or inline, you get very limited requests, limited tab completions. And then the $20 per month gives you extended limits on agent requests and unlimited tab completions. You also get something called background agents where you can run tasks in the background access to bug bot, which will look at your pull requests and look for bugs, and then access to maximum context windows. Now, there's kind of a caveat from what I understand with the $20. So if you want to use a specific model, because you can use multiple models with Cursor, whether it's GPT or Claude or Gemini, if you want to use, like, let's say Claude 4 Sonnet, and you want to only use that, you get allocated $20 per month towards that. And if you go over that, if you want to keep using that specific model, then you'll either be asked to upgrade to the 200, or you'll be asked if you want to pay the normal price for that model. Now, if you don't want to pay more than $20 per month, you don't have to, but you just switch to auto mode, which means that Cursor selects the model that's going to be used basically based on the task that you're doing. So that's kind of the caveat of this. You can't just use whatever model you want forever. And then the $200 plan is everything the $20 is. It's just more, right? You get 20 times the usage on these premium models like GPT, Claude, Gemini, Grok. You can use pretty much anything, any of the real popular models. So that's the pricing from what I understand. Now, to get Cursor, just go ahead and download it, install it, just like anything. It'll ask you if you want to import your VS Code settings, and that includes your extensions. So the interface is, very, very familiar. So let's open Cursor up, and I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to be using it in a project that already exists, which is this shopping cart UI. And before I get into anything, any of the code, I just want to talk about the settings and the interface. So the most notable change here between VS Code and Cursor is going to be this chat interface on the right. And this is where you're going to spend a lot of time if you're using AI a lot, if you're basically vibe coding. So from here, you can add context, right? Context is basically what the AI sees. And it does see your entire project without having to add context. But if you wanted to focus on specific functions or a specific problem, lines or whatever, then you can add right here, you can add certain, files and folders, code, documentation. So like if you wanted to add, let's say, the font awesome docs or something like that, or Git repositories, past chat, rules, which I'll talk about in a few minutes, terminals, your active tabs. So if I open a tab, that's automatically going to be in my context. You can see right here, one tab. And you can also specify with @ So let's say I wanted to add like index CSS or whatever, I could add it that way. All right, so just be aware of what is in your immediate context. Now, this stuff, agent, auto, I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but I want to get into the settings. So let's go to Cursor, Settings, and then Cursor Settings. So from here, in the General tab, you have your Manage Account. This is where you can see all your usage, the exact models that you use, the tokens, all that stuff. And then this is just basic settings. Privacy mode, so if you have this on, which I do, your data won't be trained on or used to improve the product. So that's up to you if you want to keep it on or off. I value my privacy, so I keep it on. And then the chat tab here, so this is where you can choose the default mode of agent or ask. Now, I would say at least 95% of the time you're going to be in agent mode, because the agent is what actually creates files, edits your code, runs terminal commands, runs tests. So it does all that stuff. It's like the virtual coder, where ask mode is more like a chatbot, like ChatGPT or Claude AI. So if you want to ask specific questions, either about the project or about something else, like maybe you want to know more about the use ref hook from React or something like that, then you would use ask. So you're most likely not going to have the default as ask. But if you want to use it, you can go here in the chat interface and you can select ask. Okay, and you might also want to use this if you want to ask a question but not worry about it actually editing your code, because sometimes the agent will edit stuff that you don't want to. It'll run code, it'll run tasks that you don't want. And you can also use background agents from here as well. So yeah, all this stuff is pretty basic. The include full folder context, I wouldn't suggest adding that, because it can add to your tokens, it can slow things down. Web search tools, so you want to allow agents to search the web for relevant information. I would suggest leaving that on. So let's see, auto run mode, also known as YOLO mode, will just run tools like command line tools and stuff without asking or needing your permission. So I would say leave this at ask every time if you're just getting started with Cursor. And then once you get a feel for it, once you add some rules, then you can just have it run everything automatically if you want. There's also an allow list. Okay, so tab, this just has to do with tab completions. There's partial accepts, so if you want to accept a part of a suggestion, you can do that with command or control arrow. Now models, this is where your models are enabled or disabled. So I pretty much have the defaults. I have GPT-5, Claude 4 Sonnet, Claude 3.7, Cursor Small, which is Cursor's own model. That's pretty much all I have enabled, but you also have like O3, you have Gemini, you have Grok. Yeah, so if you want to enable other models here, you can. Now, Claude 4 Opus is for, you can use that with Cursor, but only in max mode. So max mode will get maximum context window and tool calls. And this can, again, really just raise your token, your usage. It can also really slow things down. So I would only use this if you're doing really difficult stuff, like difficult calculations or whatever. So otherwise, I would suggest keeping that off. So background agents, I haven't really gotten into MCP tools. So basically model context protocol servers, you can add those here. Basically like, let's say Neon database or Kubernetes or Firebase, these services have these MCP servers that you can use to basically directly interact with the AI, kind of like an API. And then rules and memories. Rules are really important when it comes to coding with AI, because if you don't have rules, then it's just going to do things however it wants. So here you have both user rules and you also have project rules. So user rules are global. That pertains to any project, where project rules obviously pertain to that specific project. And stuff that is directly related to specific technologies like React or Python, whatever it is you're using, usually that's going to go in your project rules. And then more general stuff, more high-level rules will go in your user rules. So you can see mine. We'll just look at these, for instance. Prioritize clean, efficient, and maintainable code, follow best practices and design patterns, generate concise, actionable responses. Some of these are kind of redundant, but I think that they're important. So most of them are pretty general, but some are related to technologies. Like I have used TypeScript over JavaScript for any React or Next.js projects. And some of this stuff you'll add as you go along and you notice that it's doing things you don't want or that you want to change. For instance, anytime I would generate a Next.js project and use Tailwind, it was using Tailwind 3 and it was creating a config file. So I specifically said, always use Tailwind 4 syntax and refer to the docs for version 4, never use version 3. Another thing it was doing was suppressing my TypeScript errors. So I said, do not ignore or suppress TypeScript errors, focus on clean passing code. I said, never use the any type unless absolutely necessary. So, I mean, you know, rigorously apply dry and KISS principles in all code. So most of it's pretty high level, but rules are very important. Now, when you create a project rule, it creates it in your file structure. It'll be a folder called, I believe, curse.cursor, and then a rules folder. It used to be a single file called .cursor rules, but that's been deprecated, but you can still use that. It still works. And then indexing, this just shows that 100% of my code base is indexed. So basically it sees your whole code base, but again, add the context if you want to focus on something specific. And your open tabs will be in your context, so no need to add those manually. All right, so that's kind of just the gist of everything and how it works. So now what I want to do is give you a couple different examples. I'm going to start with just using Cursor with an existing project. So let's start that. All right, so as I mentioned, there's different levels of AI assistance that you can use in your projects. Anything from using it to write every line of code to you just using a little bit of tab completion, using it to ask questions and learn. And that's the way I would suggest using it if you're a beginner, not just a beginner to programming in general, but to a specific language or framework or anything you're using. So that's what I want to show you first, is to use it in an existing application. So I have this shopping cart UI, and this is just a very simple project from my React course. It's not an e-commerce platform or anything. It's just some products that you can add to your cart. And I basically used it to show how to use the context API. Because as you can see, there's a context and there's an add to cart function in that context. And what I want to use tab completion to do is to make it so we have a quantity selector that will pass a quantity in here instead of just adding one to it, which is what it's currently doing. So let's run the project. I'm going to open up my terminal. It uses JSON server. So I'm going to say run JSON-server. And then I'll open up another tab. And let's do npm run dev. And then I'll open that up. Okay, so this is what it looks like. We just have some cards with some products. This is the cart right here. And if I click add to cart, it gets added. And I can click multiple times and add multiple quantities. But like I said, I want to have a quantity selector, basically a button to increase or decrease the quantity. All right, so let's do that. I'm going to jump over to components, product card. And I'm just going to put my cursor here, and you can see it's recommending use state, import use state. It's also recommending to add the quantity as a state, which is what I want to do. So I'm going to hit tab. It'll accept both of those. Now it's going to keep going. So you see this tab to next move. So I can either hit it or I can scroll down, and I'll see right here, tab to jump here. So I'll do that, and then the recommendation is to pass the quantity into the function. So I'll accept that. All right, now there's no quantity buttons here, so I'm going to click above the add to cart button, and it should suggest, so it's suggesting an opening div. I'll go ahead and accept that. Now it's suggesting a button with an on click to set the quantity to minus whatever it is. So the decrease button, I'll accept that. Then it's suggesting the span, which is going to show the quantity, and the button to add to the quantity, so I'll accept that. Now it's showing the closing button and the closing div, so I'll click that tab to wrap it up, and now we should see the buttons. So I'll go ahead and go to the browser here, and now we have these quantity buttons. All right, and I didn't write one line of code. Now these aren't going to work just yet. If I have it to 3 and I hit add to cart, you'll see it's only 1. That's because this add to cart, even though we're passing a quantity in, it doesn't accept that. So what I want to do is go to that function, which is it's in the context coming from use cart. So I'm going to command click that, go to that file, and now notice it says tab to next move. So if I come up here, it says tab to jump here. So not only does the tab follow me, through the file going to different lines, but it follows me across multiple files. So I'll hit tab, and now it's suggesting that I add the quantity. I'll accept it. Now right here, another one's popping up, and you can't see that, but it says tab or whatever. It says tab to go here. I'm going to do that, and what it's going to do is get rid of that one, and it's going to use that quantity that's passed in. Okay, so now I'll save that. We'll go back to the project. I'm just going to clear the cart, and I'm going to select 3 of the headphones, add to cart, and now you'll see 3 times $59.99. Okay, so we now added that functionality, and I didn't write any code, but I did see exactly what it did. So this way of using AI is much different than just saying, add the quantity buttons. I mean, you could do that and then look at the file, but this shows you everything. So now I want to show you the inline edit, which is also very helpful. So let's say now that we added those buttons, we don't like the look of them, right? So let me just make this a little smaller. So we don't like the look of them. So I'm going to select the div that wraps those buttons, right? So I want to select this whole div and the 2 buttons and the quantity display. And then I'm going to hit, you can either click this quick edit or Command or Control K, and then this input is going to pop up, and I'm going to say, can you style this area better? And then you have options. You have edit selection, so that's whatever's highlighted. You have edit full file if you wanted to look at the full file. Quick question, so if you just had a quick question, which is great for learning. And then send to chat, which is just going to put whatever you put here is going to go to the chat. So I want edit selection, and I'll hit enter or click send. So it says generating. Now it's going to make the changes and give me the diff. So anything that is gone, that it gets rid of, is in red. Anything it adds is in green. So you can see it added the class of justify center, gap 3, and margin top 4, and then it added a bunch of classes onto the button. Now you can, if you don't want the suggestion or the change, you can just hit undo, or you can hit keep to keep it. Usually there's a keep all button, so you don't have to go through and click all these. Okay, now let's save it and let's go back. And now you can see that it's styled differently. It's in the middle. It has rounded buttons. Okay, just make sure it still works, which it does. It added 3. So that's inline editing. Now let's use inline editing for some other things. I'm not going to make any selection, and I'm going to hit Command K, and then I don't want a selection. So let's just go like right here and Command K. All right, so it's saying edit selection no matter what. But what I want to do is edit full file. Okay, and then I'm going to say, can you add, we'll say, ARIA attributes to the elements in this file. Okay, so now it's going to select the whole file and look at it. And there we go. So it shows me the difference, right? So what in red is what it gets rid of, green it's what it adds. I'll click accept, and then it accepts all of those. I don't have to go through and hit keep. So now if we take a look, we have like ARIA described by, we have, let's see, ARIA label. So it went ahead and added those accessibility attributes. So let's say we want to add another piece of state. Let's do a hover, so a card hover. So I'll hit enter, put my cursor here. Actually, this is suggesting an is added, which we could do this. So basically, it'll say added to cart if we clicked on the add to cart. So I'll go ahead and accept that. And then it says tab to next move right here. I'm going to hit that tab. And then it's going to add a set is added to true. Okay, so this pop-up is what it'll add if I hit tab again, which I'm going to. And then it says tab to next move again. Brings me down here and shows me that it's going to add a ternary and show added to cart if that is added is true. So I'll hit tab to accept that. Okay, let's save it. Let's go back here. Let's click add to cart. And now it says added to cart. So now I want to add a hover effect, and I could do that in a bunch of different ways. I could use inline editing. I could just use tab completion. But let's use the chat interface. So I'll say, and this is in context. You can see right here, one tab. So my product card file is in the context. So I'm going to say, can you make it so there is a, we'll just say an effect on the cards when hovering. Okay, so this is similar to using inline edit, so it should show me the diff. So it shows me which file it's working on. So product card. It's applying, and now it shows the diff, and then there's a keep all button. So I'm going to hit that, and then let's save it. And also it gives you a summary of what it did. So card container, enhance shadow on hover. It shows me exactly what it did. So pay attention to that. Don't just randomly add stuff and let it do all the work. Learn from it as you're doing it. So now if I hover over these cards, then I get that zoom effect. Okay, so those are the different ways that you can use AI to enhance your coding experience, but you can still still know what you're doing. And another great way to use it is to just ask questions. So for instance, if I want to go to the context, and let's just grab the add to cart. Actually, we'll take the whole provider. So I'll take the provider here, and I'm going to say quick edit or Command K, and I'll say, can you explain what this provider function does? Okay, and then I'm going to select, I'll just keep edit selection, or not edit, sorry, don't want to edit selection. I'm not editing anything, it's a quick question. So it'll answer me right here. So the cart provider function creates a React context provider for a shopping cart, initializes the cart from local storage, persists cart changes, provides functions. All right, and then I can add a follow-up and keep asking it if it's not clear. And then I could do the same thing over here in the chat interface. So you can do it in either area. All right, so that's pretty much what I wanted to show you with an existing project. So now let's jump in and do some higher level stuff and a little bit of vibe coding. All right, so we looked at how to kind of gradually use AI in Cursor into an existing project. Now we're going to do something more high level and do some vibe coding. And it's going to be something really simple, SaaS landing page with an interactive calculator. And we're just going to kind of one-shot it. If this were a more in-depth project, then I would do a lot more planning. I think that since we don't have to like write boilerplate and a lot of time is freed up now with AI, if you're using it, then put that energy into planning, into structuring everything out, your database models, your layout. So you want to really kind of up your project management skills. But let's go ahead and just this is really simple. So we'll say create a, say, landing page for a SaaS product with an interactive calculator. And let's say add a hero section, features, testimonials, and say add a pricing slider that updates costs, and we'll say based on number of users and other resources. And I'll say use CSS animations. What else? Create, or we'll say make it responsive with a simple hamburger menu. I notice that sometimes it overcomplicates just like hamburger menus, and it overcomplicates vanilla JavaScript a lot in my experience. So I'm going to say keep the JS very simple, clean, and readable. And I'm going to specifically say do not over-engineer. Okay, what else do I want to put? I'm going to say use only HTML, and I'm going to say plain CSS because it might use Tailwind if I don't, and vanilla JS. And I think that's it. Yeah, so let's try that out. Very basic prompt. Again, if it were a more serious project, I might put that through ChatGPT or Claude AI first, and then have it create something that's more, better formatted and just more in depth. But this is something very simple, and I don't want this video to be, 3 hours long. All right, so let's see what we got here. I'm just going to open it up first and take a look. So I'm using live server. So cloud scale your business to the cloud. Got some cool little animations here. API, DB, AI. So it looks like a legit SaaS landing page. Why choose cloud scale? I like that. I like these effects. So those are the features. We get the calculator that I asked for. All right, so very simple, but I think it's clean. I think it looks nice. I mean, I might like decrease the spacing here and do some small little adjustments, but I'm not going to do that in this video. Let's test the calculator. So we got number of users. As I scale that up, you'll see the price goes up, storage, bandwidth. So that will all cause the price to go up. Now I'd like to have a toggle here so that it would show maybe a savings if you were to pay annually versus monthly. So maybe that's something we can ask for. Let's see, get started. That has a cool effect when I click it. So let's check mobile. Oop. So we got, okay, that's fine. Little hamburger menu, and everything stacks. So yeah, this actually looks really good. I've generated quite a few things like this, and this is one of the better ones. So let's ask for it to add the annual option on the calculator. So I'm going to go back to cursor, and we're just going to keep all here. And let's say, can you add a toggle switch on the calculator that will display monthly versus yearly pricing, and let's save them, let's say 20% if they pay excuse me, yearly. And while it's doing that, let's just take a look here. So the HTML is usually pretty good with this, using semantic tags and all that. So pretty simple, pretty straightforward. The CSS, again, just got a reset. We got our containers, typography. I would have liked to have the colors in custom properties. That's something we could ask for. But at first glance, just looks fine. And script.js, so we get our DOM content loaded. We have a function that initializes these functions, the hamburger menu, the pricing calculator, and so on. This just toggles the active class on the menu. Close the menu when clicking on the nav links. Close menu when clicking outside. We got our pricing calculator initialization, so it's just grabbing all the DOM elements and putting them into variables. We have our rates object. Looks like it just added some stuff here. So anything in the green, it just added. Just going to keep all. So we get our rates object, so you can easily change this if you want, more than $5 per user or per storage, whatever. Update pricing, so this will do the calculation and then update that pricing based on that. So it looks like it just added this stuff, the is yearly, because I just asked for that. We'll check that in a minute. Animate value. So scrolling animations, just kind of adds and removes classes. We got an intersection observer, smooth scrolling. Create ripples, so that's that effect that Get Started had, has a ripple effect. Yeah, so some of this is probably overkill with the animations, but overall I think it looks all right. But let's check that switch. So we got monthly, it's at 85 right now. If I hit yearly, monthly 85, yearly it would be 816. But I'd like to see the monthly rate if I pay yearly. Does it show me that? Well, it shows the yearly savings, I guess. Yeah, I'd like to show the month. So let's go back here and let's say, can you also show what the monthly price will be if paid annually. Let's see what that does. Okay, so let's check that out. So let's see, we got monthly 85. If I hit yearly, so now it shows me the effective monthly cost would be 68 versus 85. All right, perfect. So yeah, this looks pretty good. There's not much I'd change in terms of the design. So a lot of times what I'll do is have a change document that will just update as I make changes. So why don't we do that? Let's say, can you create a changes, I'll call it changes.md file that will track, we'll say track any major changes and features that we make, and add the changes that we already made. All right, so it looks like it added the changes file. So let's see, core features implemented, hero section, navigation and mobile menu. So it looks like just the initial features that it added. Modern CSS animations, and then here, new features added, monthly versus yearly billing toggle. So it's good. It logged that, the yearly pricing with 20% discount, enhanced pricing UI, technical improvements. Okay, so this should keep going as you work, and it's nice to just have a place where you can see everything that's been changed since your initial generation. And of course, you know, you're using Git and so on, but it's nice to have just a single file as well. So yeah, that's really all I wanted to do, is just give you guys an example of generating something and talk a little bit about the workflow. And we could even do a Lighthouse report and see what kind of scores we get for performance, and what else, accessibility. I think it does SEO. All right, so pretty good scores. 91 performance, 92, 96 for best practices. SEO is 90. I mean, we could try to improve them a little bit. You could actually take a screenshot, maybe of this stuff right here, and you could put that in the context. That's another thing you can do, is you can actually load images in here. You could even put an image of a layout and ask it to replicate it with HTML, CSS, JavaScript, whatever. But yeah, I think that I'm going to stop here as far as this project goes, and then we'll jump into creating a Next.js application. So last thing I want to do is generate a Next.js project, and we're going to do something simple because I'm trying to fit all this in one video, and we're going to create a simple split view resume editor where we have a form on one side to add our information, add our experience, and then create a markdown resume on the other side. And if we have time, we'll add like PDF export, but for now, it's going to be pretty simple. And what I'll usually do for a larger project is create this project-context.md file and just put in basically my vision of the project. And this one is very simple. Usually it'll be a lot more than this, but this is a really simple project. So I'll put the goal, so build a clean split screen resume editor with live preview. The tech stack is Next, TypeScript, and Tailwind, React Markdown for preview, and local storage for persistence. Then we have some quick rules, so use TypeScript interfaces for all data, client components for forms, and server components for display, arrow functions, keep it simple and focused, have a modern look, ask to manually test code after each feature. And then I just mapped out the resume data type, which will be name, email, phone, summary, experience with some other fields, and then skills. So the layout structure, left side will be the form, right side will be the preview, split 50-50, clean professional styling. And then key features, real-time preview updates, clean form with proper spacing, etc. So I'm not going to put this in the prompt. What I do is put this in the root, and then in the prompt, I'll tell it to look at this in the context. So let's go ahead and open up Cursor. And I have an empty folder called Markdown Editor. And then what I'm going to do is generate a new Next.js project using Create Next App. Now you could go up here and say, create me a Next.js project with Tailwind 4, but when I do that, it seems to get something wrong. When you do it yourself, you have no margin of error. You know exactly what you're getting. So I would always suggest just generating the boilerplate on your own. So I'll say npx, and then let's say create-next-app, And let's do @latest and then dot because we want it in this directory. And I'm going to say yes to all this: ESLint, TypeScript, Tailwind, source directory, app router, TurboPack, and no to the import alias, changing that. Okay, and then while that's going on, I'm going to take my project context that I just showed you and move that over to the root. All right, and then I also have rules that I use for Next.js and TypeScript. So this is just, best practices, app router patterns, React 19 optimization, so it doesn't use memo or use callback because the compiler does that. Component architecture, data fetching patterns. It's just a standard file. And you can go to cursor.directory, and there's tons of rules for TypeScript and Next. But I'll just go ahead and, well, how do I want to do this? I guess I'll just copy this. And then I'm going to go to file, let's see, not file, cursor settings. We'll go to our rules. And these are going to be project rules. So right here, I could say add rule, and I'll call this ts-next. And then you can apply it manually, meaning you prompt and you tell it to use it, or you can do apply to specific files or always apply. I like to do apply intelligently, which lets the agent decide when it's relevant. So we'll do that. And then I'm just going to go ahead and paste in what I just showed you. All right, so I'll save that, and now we have those rules, and it's going to create this .cursor folder and a rules folder inside of it with that file, which has an MDC extension. Okay, so now that we have the context, we have the rules, we have the Next.js boilerplate, we'll go ahead and run the server, so npm run dev. And this is just my way of doing it. There's a million ways to do it. You might find a different way, something you like better. But everything in this video is pretty much just how I like to do it. And obviously, I'm pretty new to it. I mean, everyone is really. So we got the Next.js boilerplate up and running. Now, what I'll do is come over to the prompt, and I'll say, take a look at, and then we can use the @ symbol and then project context file. And I'll say, let me know if you... We'll say, if you understand the instructions, or something like that. You can phrase it however you want. So it gives me the project overview, key requirements, technical guidelines. So sometimes this is easier than writing the prompt out. You just create your context, you tell it to look at it, and then you go from there. So I'm ready to start building this resume editor. Should I begin by examining the current project structure and then implementing the core components? I'll make sure to use Tailwind 4. So I'm going to say, I probably should have put this in the context. I thought I did, but I'll say I already generated the app with Tailwind 4, so no need. Let's start to build out the layout and components. Okay, so it's going to examine the current project, which is just a, boilerplate. All right, so let's see. So it's going to install React Markdown, create the resume interface, build the split view layout, create the form components, and create the preview component. So that sounds like a good plan. Let's go ahead and run the React Markdown install. Now let me create the core components. First, I'll create the resume interface and types. So it's going to create the TypeScript file. If we take a look at that, we have a resume type with these fields. Experience will be an array of experiences. So this type here, we get resume form data. So I'll just say keep all to that. And you don't have to approve them. Like, see the check mark? I can reject the changes, or I can hit the check mark. But even if you don't hit the check mark, it's still going to approve it. So now let me create the components directory and the resume form component, and you can check things out as it's building it. So this will be a client component because it's going to use hooks. You can't use hooks in server components. And let's see, got our state for the form data, a use effect to check if it's in local storage, save data to local storage when the form changes, update your experience. So we should be able to add multiple experiences. Here's the function to do that. You'll be able to remove an experience, update your skills, personal information. So pretty simple stuff. And you're going to see errors and it's going to stop working. Like it's probably broken right now. Well, no, it's not. But so you'll see errors and stuff because it's in the middle of creating files. A file might be half created. So if you try to load it, you're going to see an error. Just make sure that you wait until everything is done before you actually try it out and test it. Because it's, it's still going now, so I'm not going to test it yet. But I mean, this doesn't look bad. We got our split view, which we asked for. We get the live preview. Hopefully that works. Got the form. We got an experience. So little module to add experience, add skill. Now I have it so it'll run npm run build very frequently because I don't want to have any weird TypeScript errors. I don't want to have linting errors. I don't want to suppress them. So I just want to make sure everything is nice and clean. Make sure it all passes. So it looks like got a small issue. So it'll automatically try to fix those issues, and now it looks like it passed. So the build is successful with a minor ESLint warning. Let me fix that quickly. And then it's going to check again. So it'll fix it or try to fix it and then check it again to verify it. Okay, so let's see, resume editor complete. So it basically created what we've asked for so far. We got the live preview, the form components, the split view, the local storage, modern UI. So let's test it out. Come over here and just gonna, whoops. So this will happen often, this internal server error, just because things are happening so fast, and sometimes you just need to refresh the server. So that's what I'm gonna do. And then once it refreshes, you should have no issues. It should just reload. And sometimes it takes a second. All right, so let's say John, and you can see that as I type, it's giving me a live preview. I should probably put my full name or a full name, John Doe. Let's say John at gmail.com, 555. So the text in the input is super light. I can't even see it, so we'll have to fix that. Actually, you know what? I have a form filler. I'm just going to use that. So I'm going to go ahead and just fill these out. So, and it added an experience. I know you can't really see that here. Now, if I want to add another experience, I can click that, and it has another box. So I'll fill that out. Now I have 2 experiences. And then skills looks like it's going to be just comma separated values. Again, I know you can't really see the inputs, but let's see. If I do JS and then PHP. Oh, wait. No, it's not. I'm sorry. It's not comma separated. We have a skill button here. So I'll say JavaScript, add skill. All right, so this is cool. So we got PHP, add skill, I don't know, CSS. Cool. And we can delete them. So if I click the delete, that goes away. If I click the remove on the job experience, that goes away. But let's add a couple. Let's add it back just to have something. Okay. And then it should stay. If I refresh the page, it stays because remember, it gets saved to local storage. In fact, we can make sure, and check that. So local storage, and you can see resume data. So all of our data is getting saved. Now, this obviously doesn't look very good. I mean, you're not going to go apply to a job with this, but it gives you an idea of how this works, right? Now, I do want to make the text so we can actually see it in the form. So I'll just say that the form input text is, I'll say, way too light. Please darken. And that's something that's really simple. So that should be pretty quick. Yep, there we go. So now this is darker. Yep, this one, summary looks good. So, I mean, you can imagine you could make this, you could add a ton of features to this. So you can add multiple resumes, obviously PDF export, maybe send to employer or something like that. You can have authentication with Google login, GitHub login, maybe even have premium features and charge people for those extra features. So why don't we try one more thing? Why don't we try adding a PDF export? So I'm going to say add a PDF export for the resume. And it'll probably use a package like JS PDF, I guess. HTML2 Canvas. I'm not sure if I've used those. So now we have a utils folder with PDF export.ts. So we're using those two packages. We have our export. Looks like this is all the styling for the PDF. Adding it to the canvas. So we'll see how it looks. It might look like crap to begin with, but you gotta, work through it. The symptom tracker that I'm creating, it generates health reports, and it took me a long time. It took me like 3 or 4 hours to get the PDF looking decent. It just looked horrible at first. That's what happens with a lot of these packages. You really got to tweak them. So now it's going to run npm run build. And I know it's still working, but I'm just going to see. So we do have the export PDF now. I don't want to try it though until this is completely done. Okay, so feature has been added. We're probably going to get, yep, internal server error, so that's no problem. Just restart the server. So it says the export button will now appear in the top right. Generate professional PDFs. So let's try that out. I'm going to refresh this. All right, so we got this Michelle Jacobson. Got some experience. Excuse me, let's export. So we get the download. Let's open the PDF. And there we go. Actually, it looks the exact same, really. I mean, there's some text over here, so you might have to mess with that. Probably within that, excuse me, within that utility file. But the, PDF export works perfectly. So you just work at it, you just keep going and just keep asking questions. Try to get a feel of the code and try not to just let it snowball like I mentioned before and get all this technical debt. You want to kind of understand what's going on. So that's it, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this and learned something from it, even if it's just a little bit of how to create a workflow when you're using AI. Obviously, I will do some vibe coded projects, but obviously that's not going to be the main focus. The main focus of the channel is always to teach people how to code. So that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.